conflict is inevitable, as this one pastor found out. This young pastor took a new church, went to this new church for him, and he's there and he's leading the prayer time. And what happens is half the people stand up for prayer time and half the people sit down, and they're all yelling at each other that theirs is the right tradition. Like, you're supposed to sit when you pray, you're supposed to stand when you're, and they're yelling back and forth. And the pastor is surprised by all of this, and so he after trying to talk to them and doing all the things that he could, he finally at wit's end, what am I supposed to do? So he goes to, he decides, I'm going to go to the founding pastor. He still lives in the area. He's in a retirement home. He's 99 years old. I'm going to go talk to him. And so he goes to this retirement home and lays out the situation before the retired pastor and asks him, hey, what's going on here? What's the original tradition? They ask, okay, so is standing while you're praying the tradition for this church? And the old pastor said, no, that's not it. So the young guy says, well, okay, so then sitting is the tradition at this church for prayer time. And the pastor said, no, that wasn't it. He said, well, it had to be something better than what we got now, because now half the people stand and, shout at each other, at the other people, and the other people sit and scream at each other. And the old retired pastor said, that was the tradition. You see, conflict is inevitable in this world. In fact, let's be honest, there are times when we should not avoid conflict. Like, conflict is something that is necessary, the crucial conversations that we have to have. But outside of those situations where it's like, I've got to embrace the conflict, there are ways that we can lessen the amount of conflict that we have in our life. Like, whether we're working with, dealing with coworkers or family members or whatever the situation is, there are ways that we can lessen the intensity and lessen the conflict in our lives. And that's what we see in our passage today. We're going to be in the book of Proverbs. We're going to return to Proverbs for the next 3 weeks, finish up August, and I'm looking forward to a new series that we're going to be starting in September, going through the life of Abraham, called Living by Promise. It's going to be an 8-week sermon series as we kick off kind of the fall season. But now, as we're in the book of Proverbs, and just a reminder that Proverbs was written by, it's a compilation of Proverbs by King Solomon. Solomon was the third king in the Israelite history, of the Israelites. He lived about 800 years before Jesus. And he was known for his wisdom. In fact, early in his reign, he had this time of worship with God where God came to him and said, I'll give you whatever you ask for. And Solomon said, please give me the wisdom to rule your people well. And this pleased God. And Solomon became the richest and the most influentially powerful king of the Israelites. And unfortunately, eventually he walked away from his relationship with God and started worshiping other gods. But before he did that, he compiled this book of sayings. Many of them are his sayings, but not all. Some of them are contemporaries, other people who had wisdom sayings in that time. And this book of Proverbs was probably used for schooling, to teach young men and to train them. That doesn't mean that it only applies to young men. It has a lot of he's and things like that, like these male, masculine, ways of saying things, but each thing that is said applies equally to women as well. And many of these proverbs really are principles of the type of world that God created. And so today, we're going to be in Proverbs chapter 27. We're going to start at verse 17, work our way down all the way to 22 through the course of our sermon today. And what we're going to see 4 different ways, 4 tips to help reduce conflict in our lives. So let's pray. Let's get a look at the Word of God today. Father, so thankful for your Word. So thankful that we have this opportunity to be in your presence. Thank you, Lord, for this time. And Father, as we look at your Word, I ask that you would help us to really know you and be drawn into your presence. Lord, we ask these things in your name. Amen. So let's take a look. We're going to start off in Proverbs chapter 26, looking at verse 17. It says, a person who is passing by and meddles in a quarrel that's not his is like one who grabs a dog by the ears. Grabs a dog by the ears. Right now, let's think for a moment. Can we just appreciate the imagery? throughout all of these verses, the imagery that Solomon uses is just incredible. I love them. Don't grab the dog by the ears. Now, of course, he's not talking about your pet dogs, right? I got one dog. He doesn't mind. You play with his ears. He's like, oh, yeah, whatever, and he's so happy. And, oh, that's great. I love that, right? And one of our other dog, you start playing with her. She's like, yeah, I don't really like that, Dad. Don't do that. Leave my ears alone. But, of course, Solomon is not talking about pet dogs, is he? That's not what he's talking about. Solomon is talking about a wild dog. He's saying, hey, walking up and meddling in someone else's quarrel. These two people are fighting. You walk up and you start meddling in it. That's like grabbing a coyote by the ears, right? And who's up for a little bit of hurt in their life? Who's up for getting some stitches? Yeah, let's go grab a coyote by the ears and see what happens. Right? No, the answer to avoiding that sort of pain is what? Don't grab a coyote by the ears. And likewise, if you want to reduce conflict in your life, don't get involved. Don't meddle in other people's conflicts. Don't get caught up in someone else's battle. And of course, that's easier to say than to do, because some of us have to get involved in other people's battles, right? I mean, like for police, like that's their profession, right? When people are quarreling, that's their job to meddle with that. Like parents, right? You get that when your one child is trying to kill the other child, right? You've got to get involved, right? They're probably not physically actually like attempting to kill him, but you know what I mean. Like, you got to get involved. You got to meddle, right? Anybody who's been a manager understands that at times your job is to meddle and to stop the quarrels from happening. And so Solomon's warning here is actually kind of like, hey, if you have to do this, just prepare yourself to get hurt, right? Just like if there's two dogs fighting, you try to pull them apart by grabbing them by the ears, very quickly, they're going to turn on you and you're going to get hurt. And let's just admit that reality, that when we meddle in other people's battles, we're going to get hurt. And sometimes that's the price for peace. I mean, Jesus definitely found that, right? Found that out. Like, he lived into that reality that he was going to get hurt. Right? Jesus is the Son of God who came to earth, and 2,000 years ago he came to earth, and he came to earth, why? To help deal with this relationship struggle that was between us and God. Like, we had broken God's laws, right? We were doing what was unloving towards God and unloving towards others and unloving towards ourselves, and we got, that's God's law, to love God with everything we got and love our neighbor as yourself, and we broke that. Right? And so Jesus came to help repair that relationship between us. And people didn't respond all that well to him, and they killed him. And he died on the cross, and part of the reason he did that was to pay the penalty that we had incurred for breaking God's law, so that we can have a healthy relationship with God. But it came at a price. It came at pain, with the price of pain. And luckily, if we believe in Jesus Christ as the Son of God who died on the cross and came back to life and ask for forgiveness and say, God, I want to be like you. I want to follow your ways. I want to be made into your image, right? Then we can have that healthy relationship restored with God. But it came at a price. The price of peace is often pain for the one that's trying to bring that peace to them. But Solomon isn't even really talking about peacemaking. That's not really what he's talking about. And we can admit that that's a reality of life, but what he's really talking about is when you choose to get involved in somebody else's battle. You see that word meddle in the Hebrew, not metal as in like I made a sword out of metal, but metal as in I'm getting involved in something that I shouldn't. That word meddle in the Hebrew literally means to become excited about something, to become excited about it. It's the idea of getting angry over someone else's fight, getting angry over someone else's fight. It's so easy for us to get caught up in the midst of someone else's battle, to get caught up in someone else's fight. Bridget and I had these friends, they're a couple, and we would get together with them almost on a monthly basis, play games, have fun, and unfortunately, we didn't realize that there was their relationship, this couple's relationship was unhealthy, and it was not in a good place, and so we found ourselves, they were in a divorce, and we found ourselves right in the middle of that divorce. And that was so difficult, right? Because we're trying to be friends with both of them because both of them are our friends, but not without taking sides on one side or the other, just trying to support them and love them. But they want to draw us into side, especially with one of them actively trying to draw us onto their side. And here's the reality. It's so easy to get caught up in somebody else's battle. But when you do, you grab the coyote by the ears. Don't grab the coyote by the ears, but when you do, that's what happens. When you meddle with someone else's business, when you get mixed into their battle. And of course, that's not the only time that we're tempted to join someone else's battle. From what happens in our house to what's happening on a grand national scale right now, like we're always encouraged to get involved in somebody else's battle, to take up someone else's battle. Like, for example, right now, in our politics system we have right now, it's not enough for you to simply vote for one person or the other. Right? President Trump is not just asking for your vote. He wants you to join his battle. Kamala Harris, Vice President Kamala Harris, right? She's not simply wanting you to vote for her. She wants you to get angry and rise up and against Trump. It's not enough anymore in our nation to simply vote one way or the other. It seems like they've declared war against each other, and you got to decide which side of the war that we're on. You have to choose a side. However, the Bible tells us the real war. Right? It's not with our culture. It's not with the person that's running for president. The real war is not between Kamala Harris and President Trump, right? That's not where the real war is. The real war is the spiritual war that's raging around us, right? The war that we have with principalities and spiritual beings, right? That's fighting around us, and we have to make a decision in that battle, whether we're going to stay with Satan in the world that we were born into, or choose to live in God's side and to pursue what God would have us to do. That's the only battle that we need to make a decision in, that we have to choose a side. We also run into this at home, right? Your one child wants you to get angry with them at their sibling who they think offended them. Right? Your coworker or employee wants you to get angry with them at their coworker or the boss, or that they think offended them. Right? They want you to join in their battles. Right? They want you to invest your emotion into the battle. They want you to grab the coyote by the ears. This world wants you to live angry, but when we live angry, we're only hurting ourselves and opening ourselves up to more quarrels, more fighting, more conflict. And if you want to reduce conflict in your life, stop grabbing the coyote by the ears. Stop joining other people's battles. And don't let yourself get drawn into arguments that aren't your own. And some of you are going to say, well, Greg, on the flip side, aren't there times when we have to get involved? Aren't there times when we should emotionally respond to a situation? Isn't there a time when we should get angry and over someone else's fight? And I would say, yeah, and I would encourage you to let God be your guide in that. Like literally, what did Jesus get angry over? Right, go to the Gospels and spend time. Like, where's Jesus getting angry? And what you're going to find is that Jesus gets angry, for others when the established system of government, or not just the government, the established system that's in play took advantage of the weak and the helpless. He got angry on behalf of the people who had no voice, had no power, and were being used, abused, and ignored by the system and play, those systems in power. He fought for them and helped them when no one else, even themselves, cared for and fought for them. So you want to reduce conflict in your life? First step, don't grab the coyote by the ears. Secondly, say what you mean. Say what you mean. Take a look at verse 18 and 19. It says, like a madman who throws flaming darts and deadly arrows, so is the person who deceives his neighbor and says, I was only joking. And when I read this the first time, when I was in high school, I was like, that's really in there? Like, I can't believe that's in there. Right? Because how many times have you heard that cutting remark, that cut down, that slam, right? And they're, oh, I'm just joking. Oh, don't take it so hard. I'm just joking. JK, right? If you don't know what JK means, that's text lingo for just kidding. I didn't really mean it, just kidding. And too often, these jokes are attempts to play down attempts to hurt, belittle, and abuse others and bully those that are around us. Too often, these jokes are really revealing what's going on inside of us, right? It's what's inside of us coming out. And we play them off as a joke so that if other people don't agree with it, they'll say, you can say, well, I was just joking. I didn't really mean it, right? I was just joking. But if they actually respond in kind, then we know that they believe like we do. And Solomon points to this just joking as a phrase that's used to deceive and hide what we really think. Just joking is an attempt to deceive and hide what we really think. And we say, I'm just joking, to make it seem like we don't believe it when actually we do. It is a path to deception, but words have power. And deception is like, shooting flaming arrows randomly about, right? Verse 18 says to throw them in our English. You're throwing these arrows, right? But that word throw can actually mean shoot in the Hebrew. And you know what's interesting? That word deception can also mean shoot. They're not the same word. They're two different words, but your secondary meanings can also both mean shoot. The reality is that deception is always going to hurt the people that you are deceiving. Deception is always like an arrow being fired into the heart of those who are around, who you're speaking to. And just as flaming arrows can burn a house down, deceptive, careless words can burn your life down. Right, if you want to reduce conflict, you need to say what you mean. You need to speak truthfully without deceit. Jesus said that we need to let our yes be yes and our no be no. He said, don't swear by anything. Don't take an oath by anything, by heaven or by earth, but instead let your yes be yes and your no be no. And what he's saying when he says that, what he means is that be the type of person that when you speak, people know that you're speaking the truth, that you mean what you say. Yeah, don't be the type of person who has to say, no, I swear that it's true. Right? Be the type of person that when you speak, everybody knows that is the truth because that's who you are. And so I want to encourage you, teenagers, those who are young, maybe college age, just starting off in life, like make it a point in your life to avoid deception. Because deception is always going to hurt others. It's going to leave you on an island. It's going to leave you alone. It's going to isolate you. Speak the truth and mean what you say. Speak truthfully. On the flip side, this passage, I think, is encouraging us that we don't always have to say everything that comes to mind. Everything that comes into our minds is not required for us to speak it out. In fact, Proverbs chapter 17, verse 28 says, even a fool is considered wise when he keeps silent, discerning when he seals his lips. Now, as you get older, we're forced to learn that we don't always have to say what is in our mind. In fact, that oftentimes it's better to not say what we are thinking. It's more important to keep what we're thinking in our head than speaking truthfully. Recognizing when the right time to verbalize your thoughts and not is of so much importance. And when we do say everything that's on our mind, right, we inadvertently shoot fire arrows, right, into the relationships around us. And so we need to recognize when is the right time to speak and when is it not the right time. When is it time to hold on to what you're thinking instead of letting it out. And so to reduce conflict, don't grab the coyote by the ears. And secondly, right, say what you mean. Say what you mean. Thirdly, you want to reduce conflict in your life. Thirdly, remove the fuel from the fire. Remove the fuel from the fire. Take a look, verse 20. It says, without wood, fire goes out. Without a gossip, conflict dies down. See, here's the thing. Fire requires three things in order to burn, right? We know it needs oxygen, it needs heat, and it needs fuel. It needs wood. It needs something that it can burn. And if you remove even one of those things, the fire dies down. And Solomon says, hey, if you want to reduce the flame of conflict, you need to remove the fuel. And the fuel, he's saying, is gossip. Gossip is the fuel for conflict. Now, a guy named Matt Mitchell defined gossip as bearing bad news behind someone's back out of a bad heart. Bearing bad news behind someone's back out of a bad heart. And gossip in the Bible really is kind of an umbrella term that covers several different ideas. It covers the idea of slander and hearsay and bringing a bad report. And it kind of, all three of those things fall underneath gossip. Slander is when you outrightly tell a lie or share something that you don't know is true. Like think back to when you're a child. Right? Think back to when you were a child and your sibling offended you. You got a brother, you got a sister, and they offended you. And so what did you do? You went and you told your other brothers and their friends that Jimmy's a liar and he eats worms and I don't like him. People don't like him and things like that. That's slander. And we can still do that as an adult. I think that many of us as Christians, we begin to realize that telling outright lies about people is wrong and we shouldn't do that. But that's slander. That's a part of gossip. But on the other hand, when we share what our, a friend about what, your sister's ex said about your neighbor, right? When you share that with your friend and you don't know whether it's true or not, that's hearsay. Or when you get that text about what's going on with your friend group that you didn't realize and you don't know if it's true or not, but you realize and you share it with someone else, that's hearsay. Right? It's sharing something that you haven't taken the time to confirm. And you don't know if it's true. You think it might be true, but it's really juicy anyways. Let's just share it. And that's slander. That's hearsay. Then lastly, you have this reality of when you see George at a coffee shop with a woman who's not his wife. I mean, how dare George do that? Like his wife's been so loving to him. And think about his kids, and how could he be meeting with this other woman at a coffee shop behind his wife's back? And you go and you start telling other people about that. That's bringing a bad report. And the question is, what is the intent behind your heart? Like, why do you feel the need to hurt George by sharing that? Why would you do that? I mean, have you taken the time to understand who George is having coffee with? That really it was his sister who was only in town for the morning and he wanted to have a chance to meet with her, but his wife had to work, and so he meets with her at a coffee shop? But you didn't know that. He's telling the truth with the intent to harm the person you're talking about is a form of gossip. And I think the most important thing is recognizing what's really going on inside your heart. Because when you tell something about somebody, it's hurtful, it's bad about someone else. Why are you really doing it? And of course, there are times when we got to share, like when someone breaks the law, we got to talk to the cops and tell the cops about that, or someone's doing something dangerous at work that's going to put other people at danger. It's an unsafe thing. You got to talk about that, right? Those things you got to respond to. But when you share the truth in a hurtful way, you're engaging in gossip, and the intent. And the intent behind why you're saying it, that's really what gossip comes down to. The truth of gossip is, what is your intent? Now, the joke around churches is that we tend to gossip the most through sharing prayer requests. Did you hear about George? Oh, well, we need to be in prayer about George. George was, you saw he was with another woman who wasn't his wife, and we need to pray for their relationship and think about their kids. We should be praying for them. But the reality is that for gossip to be gossip, it comes down to the intent of our hearts. Why are you sharing what you're sharing? And if you're sharing it, and this is going to hurt George, that you're passing it on, then why are you sharing it? What is the intent behind your heart? And I think that every person on this planet, besides Jesus, has dealt with gossip, has gossiped. I think that's a reality of life. I think gossip is something that is so tempting to us that it's like utterly impossible for us to avoid. I know that I've struggled with conflict in my life, or gossip in my life in the past. You see, Proverbs in 26:22, just a couple verses down, says, a gossip's words are like choice food that goes down to one's innermost being. And if that sounds familiar, that's because there's another verse that I preached about that says the exact same thing just a few weeks ago when I talked about the power of words. You see, gossip is like a candy. It is exciting. It tastes sweet. But in the end, it's really a poison. It's a poison deep down inside of us. And remember that words are a type of food. And every word that comes into us has its effect on us. And when we swallow gossip, we are gorging ourselves on something that in the moment tastes good. It tastes amazing. It's so sweet and amazing, but in the end, it's going to leave us sour and it's going to leave us hurting. And see, gossip always hurts. Gossip always hurts, always. It hurts the person that you're gossiping about. It hurts you. It hurts the person you're gossiping to. It hurts God, who has to listen to you gossip about the person that he loves, right? And gossip only stirs up conflict. It is the charcoal of the flames of conflict. It is the wood on the bonfire of conflict. And it will not help anything, but instead it will stoke up the flames of conflict. And so for a time, you can gossip and feel like there's peace, but it's really like a smoldering fire. And every time you get a little whiff of smoke, and you're like, oh, what's that? What's that? It's just waiting for this wind to come along and fan those flames into the fire. Gossip is the charcoal that is keeping it alive. And because gossip feeds on the negativity of others, right? It just feeds and builds up that negativity towards other people in your life. In your life, it's going to build up that negativity. It's going to train you to think negatively about everybody. It's going to train you to be looking for the bad. It's going to be training you to think that everybody is bad and everything is negative. And we may think that gossip comes from outside of us. Oh, I'm just sharing what I heard. But the reality is that's out of the mouth. Jesus says it's out of the mouth that the heart speaks. Out of the overflow of the heart, it's out of the overflow of the heart that the mouth speaks. And when you listen to and engage in gossip, you are only revealing what is going on inside of your heart. What's going on inside of your heart? A heart that indulges in gossip is one that does not think of others. It thinks of them not through love and grace and compassion, but instead through hurt and fear and cynicism and shame and condemnation and arrogance. And if we want to defeat gossip in our life, right, we need to allow our hearts to change. Right? We need to allow our heart wounds to be healed. And instead, we need to be filling our hearts not with more gossip, but with the love of God. And so to reduce conflict in your life, you need to stop grabbing the coyote by the ears, right? And you need to say what you mean, and you need to remove the fuel from the flames. You got to get the gossip out of your life. Lastly, you need to vet your friends. Look at verse 21. It says, as charcoal for embers and wood for fire, so is a quarrelsome person for kindling strife. Right? Do you know that person who always wants to pick a fight, right? I was that person. I've told you that in the past. That was me. I was one who always wanted to win the fight, particularly against specific people, but I needed to be right. I needed things to work because of what was going on in my life. And maybe you're one of them also. Maybe you're someone who's never known a bad fight. Maybe you find yourself in arguments on a weekly basis. Maybe it's bi-weekly basis. Maybe you have a conversation you can't have a conversation about something without walking away feeling like you've won. Maybe you would rather have a good argument than learn something new about yourself. And if you aren't that person, then you know someone who is. And Solomon's simple advice is, if you don't want conflict, reduce the time that you spend in their presence, right? The quarrelsome person is the charcoal, is the flame, is the one that causes the fire. Then reduce your time with that quarrelsome person. And this, of course, is great advice if they're just like a fellow student. That you can, I'm just going to stay out of their way, right? Or a coworker that you only interact with on a semi-regular basis. But what if they're your, sibling that you live with instead of the one that lives in Fort Wayne, right? What if it's the coworker you have to work alongside of, your boss that you're working closely with, right? What if it's a child of yours? What then? Well then, first off, reduce the wood for the fire in your own life, right? If they're the kindling, and then you need to reduce the wood. Right? 2 Timothy 2:23 says, have nothing to do with foolish, ignorant controversies. You know that they breed quarrels. You see, foolish, ignorant, controversies, they're the wood. And if you have those in your life, right, they're going to help create the flames. Like, you cannot get into a fight about something that you don't care about. You don't care about it, who cares? You believe that, whatever. Right? This is like what we talked about first. Don't grab the coyote by the ears. Right? Don't let yourself get caught up in someone else's battle. If you don't care, then they're not going to get into the fight. See, quarrelsome people have a tendency to get fired up about something. But if you don't care about it, you have nothing to fight about. So keep the main thing, right? Major in God's love. Major in, Jesus Christ and becoming like Him, right? In His love and His grace. Like, don't get caught up and carried into, too deeply into the elections, or, if there was a man on the grassy knoll, or flat earth society, right? Like, I think as Christians that we should get out and vote for someone that we think is going to do well at leading our country in the ways of God, right? But ultimately, that doesn't change your life, right? You still have to live according to, what Jesus called us to. You still have to live a life of love. And the most important thing is pursuing Jesus and walking in His ways. And the most important thing is growing and becoming more like Him every single day. And so, hey, you know what? If you care about JFK, assassination, conspiracies, or flat earth stuff, whatever. But don't let it become such a big deal that it's going to draw you into a battle. Let the main thing be the main thing. James 4:1 tells us what causes quarrels and what causes fights among you. Is it not this? That your passions are at war within you? So what are you truly passionate about? Jesus should be your highest passion. If Jesus is your main thing, then you will find that you can start to shrug off many quarrels that come your way. So reduce the wood for a fire in your life by making the main things the main thing. Secondly, know when to stop. Know when to stop. That sounds really simple, but let me get into it. Proverbs 17:14 says, the beginning of strife is like letting out water. So quit before the quarrel breaks out. When things are transitioning into quarrel. When you're getting into that Tinkerbell moment where your face is turning red and your heart's starting to pound and you're like, oh, right? And in that moment, you need to recognize and quit. And that means something. That means, first off, you need to know yourself. You need to know yourself well enough to know, hey, this is escalating beyond what it should. This is going beyond what it should. Right? That you can tell when you're starting to take the bait. You need to understand that. Secondly, it means that you understand your emotions and your feelings. Like, you recognize, my feelings are getting caught up in this. I'm rising to the bait. I'm taking the bait, whatever it is, right? And it means then, secondly, having a plan in place on how to stop yourself. You need to know yourself well enough to know that you're rising to the occasion, that you're taking the bait. And you need to have a plan in place for when that happens. I often counsel couples when we get together, and I say, when you're starting to get into that argument, right, and you recognize in yourself, this is getting out of control, this is going beyond, what a healthy discussion, then call for a timeout. Say, I need a timeout. Never say you need a timeout. Always, I need a timeout. I need a timeout. I need a time to cool down. I need time to collect my thoughts. Let's come back and have this conversation at such and such time. Always, pick a specific time. Pick a specific time and say, I'm going to come at this specific time. Let's finish this conversation, right? Create a plan. Create a plan. You're not just going to quit automatically without having figured out how you're going to quit. Maybe it's like, hey, you're at work. Like, I need to use the restroom. Get yourself out of that situation. Whatever the case is, learn yourself and plan a way to stop yourself before it becomes a problem. You see, it takes two to fight, so contain yourself. A quarrelsome person might fight with themselves, but they can't fight with you if you won't pick up the bait. So stop while the stopping is good. And I know that's easier to say than it is to do. I mean, I remember a time in my life, and I'm a pastor, and I got drawn into a quarrel, into a debate with a very quarrelsome teen. And I was the adult, and I should have known better, and I should have stopped when the stopping was good. I knew better. I should not have picked up the bait. I should not have allowed it to develop into the bait it was, and ultimately it was empty. Why? Because all debates are empty, right? Everybody walks out of a quarrel, out of a debate, believing the same thing as when they walked into it. No, debates never change anybody's mind. Right? They never change anybody's mind. It only supports what you already believe. In fact, the only thing a debate does, a quarrel does, is actually radicalize the other person, right? Because they believe, well, I must be right. I can't believe that they can't even begin to see that I am true. Debates never work. So limit the time and space that you have with a quarrelsome person. And if you can't, reduce the conflict in your life by reducing the wood in your own life that they can set on fire. Recognize when it's time to stop. And so, we cannot fully avoid conflict in your life, but Solomon, he gives us these 4 tips. I'll go over them one last time. Here's the 4 tips to help you reduce conflict in your life. Don't grab a coyote by the ears, right? Don't get angry for someone else's battle. Don't get drawn into someone else's battle. Don't meddle in other people's fights. Secondly, right, say what you mean. Say what you mean. Don't deceive people. Don't say I was just joking. Don't trick people. Speak what you mean and know what say what you mean and know when it's right time to say something or just to keep that to yourself. Thirdly, remove the fuel from the fire. Take gossip out of your life. Don't let that be a major element in your life, because gossip will always fan the flames of conflict, and it only harms you and your community. And fourthly, vet your friends. And those people who are closest in your life, if you don't want conflict, don't allow the people who are quarrelsome to have that place that's close in your life. Reduce your time with them. If you do these 4 things, it's going to help reduce the amount of conflict you have in your life. And I get it. Even with those tips, you're still going to have conflict, but just start trying to apply them, and it should help out. Let's pray. Father, we thank you for today, and we thank you, Lord, for this time. And Father, I ask that you would be honored and glorified in us. Lord, I ask that you would help us to walk with you, and Lord, we understand that we're going to deal with conflict in our life all the time. Lord, I pray that you would help us just to learn how to differentiate between ourselves and other people. Help us to recognize, when we need to not, when we're starting to meddle in someone else's battle and to let go of that. Help us to lay aside gossip and to speak truthfully. Help us to vet our friends well. Ultimately, Lord, help us to walk in a way that brings glory to you. Father, we ask these things in your name. Amen.